What's up, quacks? So today's video is going to be on Mother Ethel and her lore. She got her own video because she's a very deep and complex character, so I figured I might as well just dedicate this to her and talk about all the complexities and themes about her as a person and how that ties into the overall themes of the Wonderland story. So let's just get some establishing world stuff out of the way first. So Wonderland is a place that is made by misfits for misfits. It's a magical world where misfits go to, like, from our world to that world. So whenever someone is feeling really upset or whatever, a portal will open up from our world and it can take them to Wonderland. You can choose to come back to the regular world if you want to, but most people don't, because why would you? You're a reject, so why would you go back? And there's also a place called the Garden of Reflections where you can literally discard your memories and put them into a forget-me-not, so that way you can forget your old life and just create a new life in Wonderland. You can return to those memories and sort of look back, because people do miss their old lives. Like, when I say they get rid of their memories, I don't mean they like permanently eject them. There's still like a feeling of like something being missing, pretty much. So it's not like they completely forget everything. So that's why sometimes people, go to the Garden of Reflections to look back on their past lives, because, obviously even if they were rejected, they do miss certain parts of themselves. But yeah, so when you come to Wonderland also, you sort of change physically. Some characters have changed physically while others don't. They become more whimsical and wacky because it's Wonderland, so of course things are going to be strange and weird. When it comes to Mother Ethel, she changed in a different way. It was more of a voluntary change rather than a change that was from Wonderland itself. So now that we got that out of the way, let's explain Mother Ethel before she came to Wonderland. Mother Ethel's backstory was quite dark and depressing. She was forced to adhere to rigid standards of beauty and femininity that she can never reach because her parents are always trying to force her into a box that she can never fit into. Because they were like, well, why are you so tall? Why are you so this? Why are you so that? But she just couldn't control that. Ethel is 6'8", and when she came to Wonderland, she was 14 years old. She was already at that height, and I'm sure you can imagine being 14 years old and being 6'8" is not something that would be pleasant, especially being a girl. Being a teenage girl in general is not fun. Adolescence isn't fun. So obviously Ethel being 6'8" and also having to deal with the fact that she was insecure about her body in another way, the fact that she is completely flat everywhere and she's built like a ruler, that did not make her feel great. It made her feel very unfeminine, and that made her feel really bad about herself. And her parents are always trying to make her more feminine, but she just did not vibe with that. She escaped into the world of fantasy. She was always reading about fairy tales and stuff because she was like, well, I have a terrible home life, so I might as well read about fairy tales and stuff because that's the only thing that distracts me from how terrible my life is. So that's just what her life was like. She had to constantly put up with that. She was also bullied and just rejected from everybody because people thought she was weird. No one wanted to be with the weird 6'8" girl who was built like a ruler. So Ethel was just rejected everywhere. No one seemed to like her. She just felt like such an outcast. And after a fight with her parents, she just stormed off to her room and cried until she noticed the portal that opened up. She stepped through and she ended up in Wonderland. When she ended up in Wonderland, that's when she realized, oh my gosh, it's just like the stories I read. I'm finally in a new world where I can be wherever I want to be. Well, obviously she didn't think that at first. First thing she thought was, wow, I'm really hungry and lost. Because she got lost because the one thing about Wonderland is that when the portals send you to Wonderland, they don't really send you anywhere specifically. They send you somewhere random. And so Ethel got kind of lost. She was really hungry, and she found these cherry roses, which are magical roses that when you eat them, they can change your hair color. So she started eating them because she was so hungry and disoriented that she mistook them for apples. And after eating them, she noticed that her hair started to turn red. And after she noticed that, she was like, oh, that's weird. And that's when she encountered the blue caterpillar. Well, technically the turquoise caterpillar, but whatever. Lapis Lazuli. So Lapis Lazuli was like, oh, hey, Ethel, what's up? So, welcome to Wonderland. You seem very lost and hungry. So since you're new here, I might as well help you out. You can live with me for the time being. And from that point onward, Ethel was raised by Lapis Lazuli. Lapis is basically like Ethel's parent figure, but they grew distant over time because of Ethel's darkening personality, as you'll find out later on. And also Ethel met Micah, aka the Mad Hatter, and Micah and Ethel fell in love with each other pretty quickly. It was love at first sight. And once she got assimilated to Wonderland, she distanced herself from her old life completely. She cut her hair and had more of a edgy, shaggy style. She just dressed less feminine, like traditionally feminine. She just acted more wild and stuff. She was having a great time because she was finally in an environment where she didn't have to feel like she was forced to be in a bubble. She just wanted to be herself, and she could finally be herself in this world. She felt great. It was awesome. She had a boyfriend and everything was going great. So what could possibly go wrong? Why did Ethel ruin all that? What happened? And that's where things went wrong. So when Ethel was 25, she realized something was not right. She just felt something was off, and as I mentioned before, people have vague memories of their past lives while they're in the Wonderland, and they go to the Garden of Reflections to look back at their old memories. When Ethel looked back at her old memories, that's when it clicked. She needed to change Wonderland because she wanted Wonderland to reflect beliefs that she was starting to slowly develop as she had some vague memories of her past life. And that's where she decided to build the Peculiar Abbey. So the Peculiar Abbey is an abbey where she started to teach people, specifically girls that came to Wonderland just like her, about peculiarism, which is basically this religion, I guess you could say, that is of Ethel's very disjointed and nonsensical beliefs. I say that because it's contradictory and doesn't make sense because it's Wonderland logic, but also because it's just Ethel trying to justify her being very not great, just kind of being awful, trying to justify that by just hiding it behind a fancy word pretty much. You'll see what I mean later on. So after she established the Abbey, she asked for Micah, the Blue Caterpillar, and Micah's friend, the Cheshire Cat, to be teachers at the school. The school / Abbey only has like 30 girls, so it's not that big. So that's why 3 teachers are there. And Ethel also teaches, but she's like the main teacher. She's like the head abbess teacher or whatever of the Abbey / school, while the other teachers teach other subjects, so they aren't teaching peculiarism or anything like that. They're just teaching regular subjects. It's literally just like a school, but also a church. It's basically Catholic school. So things were kind of okay after Ethel established the Abbey, but then things got weird. So one thing you'll notice is that Ethel's hair is definitely very important to her character. And the cherry roses were something I mentioned. You see, Ethel, before she came to Wonderland, had blue hair and blue eyes. When she came to Wonderland and having a lot of cherry roses, specifically melting them into tea, her hair and eyes started to turn red. And that signified the new Ethel. So you see, Ethel wanted her hair to turn red because she wanted to distance herself from her old life. This new peculiarism thing, all that was basically a way for Ethel to regain control and power over her past. Even though Ethel had finally escaped from her past life and is now in a safe place where people love and care about her, she still doesn't feel right. She still wants to perpetuate that cycle that she was forced into ever since she was born. She wants to perpetuate those beliefs because she just doesn't know any better, because she wants control, and that's just all that she knows, even though she literally chosen to not do that because that's just how bad it was. When Ethel was 25, she started to curl her hair, make it more cutesy and pretty and ladylike. When she was a teen, up until that point, her hair was more short and shaggy and just kind of a mess because she was embracing her edgy side. 35, then she grew out her hair. Her hair grows really fast, by the way. So yeah, after a while, she just let her hair grow out and she kept drinking the cherry rose tea. Because her hair is so voluminous and long, the cherry rose tea takes forever for her hair to turn entirely red. That's why the ends are still blue, because it's just constantly fighting. And it's a visual and literal metaphor of Ethel's past self and her current self fighting, because she's basically trying to like free herself from her younger self, but also is kind of trapping herself in a way by reinforcing the beliefs that she was taught when she was younger, which is just really depressing. As Ethel grew older, she became more feminine again and sort of embraced this more traditional look. That's why she looks like a priestess, basically. And when she established the abbey, she made the girls wear these outfits that look very like, you know, nun-like, you know, something like that. Like, it's very Catholic coded. So after Ethel established the abbey, some girls started to come to the abbey, and she started to teach them about peculiarism. And 3 noble girls that have arrived to the abbey are very important to the story. First is Madeline. So Madeline is basically Mother Ethel's favorite. She is basically her daughter. Now, technically speaking, Mother Ethel is the mother to all the girls of the abbey, but it's very obvious that Madeline is the favorite because Madeline fits into what Mother Ethel believes is like the peak of femininity and perfection. Even though Madeline has her own issues, Mother Ethel just loves her too much and is basically like, yeah, you're basically perfect and like you're basically ideal of what femininity should be and blah, 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 blah. And all the other girls should emulate your behavior and all this other stuff. And she will not tolerate anyone slandering her. Meanwhile, another character is completely opposite of that, Alice. So Alice is the main character of the story, and Ethel does not like her. When she was younger, Ethel did like her. She did definitely see her as a daughter, but like over time, Alice just did not sit well with her because Alice reminds Ethel of her younger self. Specifically when she came to Wonderland, because her Wonderland self was when she was free, spirited, and like all this and that. She was, you know, not worrying about femininity and standards. She was just being her pure, happy self. And Alice is herself. She doesn't mind being the way that she is. She's a tomboy. She's very spunky. She doesn't mind getting dirty. She doesn't mind that her hair is messy. She doesn't mind all that. But Ethel does. She doesn't like that Alice is basically so boyish and masculine in her eyes, even though she's really not. And she hates that. And as a result, Madeline and Alice are always fighting with each other, even though it's really funny because Madeline is 18 years old, Alice is 12 years old. So imagine being an 18-year-old beefing with a 12-year-old. That's really funny. But anyway, so Ethel is intentionally like having these two constantly clash with each other. She's always comparing them. She's always telling Alice, you need to be more like Madeline because Madeline is perfect and wonderful and amazing, and you're basically not. Why are you like this? And Alice is like, what the heck is wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with me. Like, I'm just living. Why do you hate me so much? And it's really sad because, of course, things like this happen in real life. You know, mothers having favoritism over one daughter or something like that. It's basically an impossible standard because Alice can never reach those standards because what Ethel wants from Alice just can't give to her because she doesn't want to be like that, and also because like what Ethel wants, she doesn't know herself. That's why peculiarism doesn't make any sense, because it doesn't make sense, because that's how beauty standards and all this are like in real life. They always change. They don't make sense, and they're basically impossible to reach. And if you do somehow manage to reach those standards, you still lose in some way. You have to spend the rest of your life pretty much trying to adhere to those standards. How many times have you heard stories about how like women who try so hard to wear a bunch of makeup and look a certain way, constantly shaving and doing all that stuff, they end up basically being miserable, or they freak out if they have to go out and they don't have like makeup on. It probably sucks to be stuck, having to basically be forced to be perfect. That is basically how all these characters are. Ethel is basically trapped all of them into this cycle of impossible perfection. But anyway, so then there's Lillian. Lillian is also a character that Ethel does not like because Lillian and Alice are best friends. And Lillian does not adhere to the standards that Ethel likes because Lillian is also tomboyish. She has short hair, and also Lillian is chubby, and Ethel does not like that. Now, I didn't mention this in like her bio or anything, but Ethel does try to like enforce certain standards of beauty onto the girls. She does try to encourage them to dress a certain way. She encourages them to like shave, have their hair styled nicely and all that. And Alice and Lillian do not do that. Instead, they decide not to do that because they're literally 12, like they just trying to exist, you know, but also because they just don't like to do that. They prefer not to do any of that. They just want to live. They just want to be vibing, and also because it's Wonderland. No one gives a shit if you're a woman with body hair. No one gives a shit if you're super tall. No one cares. But Ethel cares way too much, and she made the other girls care. So as a result, all the other girls are constantly ostracizing Alice and Lillian because they're the weird ones, because they don't listen to what Ethel wants from them. And as a result, those two are always by themselves, and that's why they're so close to each other, because they got no one else, since they seem to be the outcasts, which is very ironic. In a world of outcasts, they're the outcasts. It's really sad. Anyway, so some more stuff happens, and this is where things get really dark. And by dark, I just mean like, Ethel goes from like, okay, sympathetic, toxic, motherly figure to like straight up evil. And this is where I'm really conflicted, because I love Ethel, but also it's like, when you hear what she does, you're just gonna be like, what the fuck? But also like, when you consider her backstory, it makes sense, but it's still really fucked up and inexcusable. So before we talk about what Ethel did, we have to introduce another character to the scene, the Jabberwocky. So this character is a being that basically exists to feed off the misery of the people in Wonderland. So all the people in Wonderland have this underlying sense of anxiety and fear, because even though they live in a world of outcasts and are mostly peaceful, they do worry about their past, and also they have insecurities that may have stayed over when they came to Wonderland, simply because it's just natural. Of course, people are going to feel a bit insecure, or they're still gonna have like some bittersweet memories of their past lives, and as a result, that all manifested into the Jabberwocky. Thousands of years ago, in Wonderland's infancy, the Jabberwocky was a very fearsome creature that terrorized Wonderland, but the Jabberwocky was defeated by a knight and was presumably defeated. However, the Jabberwocky came back because they just revived themselves, I guess, because there was an underlying sense of tension growing, I'm guessing because of Ethel. But because of that, Ethel attracted the Jabberwocky, because Ethel had a lot of potential to create misery, because the Jabberwocky's intention was that they were going to give Ethel their powers, not all of them, but like a good chunk of their powers, so that Ethel could do some real damage and some really crazy shit, as a way to pretty much maximize suffering, because Ethel pretty much had a plan to take over Wonderland, become the Red Queen. She wanted to take over Wonderland completely, and when she told the Jabberwocky this after they met, the Jabberwocky was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna help you out. Here, have these powers. We'll meet up in secret, since, you know, we don't want anyone to know about us. Even though the Jabberwocky does have like a secret disguise that they sort of go around as to look innocent, they still meet up secretly, just so they don't arouse any suspicion. But yeah, so the Jabberwocky was pretty much like, yeah, you know, Ethel, go use your powers, have fun. Become the Red Queen, you know, take over Wonderland. It's gonna be great. I'm rooting for you. But the Jabberwocky was not rooting for Ethel because they liked Ethel. Well, they do like Ethel as like sort of a weird pawn, but because they want Ethel to make everyone suffer, because they know that if Ethel makes everyone suffer, they will have a meal, basically. They'll have infinite amount of misery to feast on, and that's great for them. It win-win. Ethel gets what she wants, and Jabberwocky gets what they want. This leads to what Ethel did, and it's absolutely awful. So as time progressed to like the present day of the story, Ethel is going progressively more irritable because of Alice and Lillian's antics. She's also just becoming more demanding and has rigid standards that are getting increasingly more hard to achieve, that the girls are like, okay, Mother Ethel, like, you need to chill, like, we get it, like, what's going on, why are you being like this? She's trying really hard to, like, withhold a lot of her anger, but, like, Lillian did something that was so minuscule that somehow it pissed her off. So, a lot of the things that the girls had to do in the Abbey is, like, paint roses, and she wanted the roses to be painted red. However, Lillian decided to be different and quirky, and she decided to paint one of the roses rainbow colored. Ethel saw this, and she did the most normal thing ever. She literally turned Lillian into a flower. And by the way, this was not a simple, quick transformation. This was a very, very painful and disturbing transformation that shocked and horrified everybody. So Ethel doing this was like a turning point for everybody. This was what starts the sort of the story and what starts the whole like plot of Ethel going down a really dark path. And as a result of Ethel turning Lillian into a flower, Alice starts to hate Ethel way more. Lillian is miserable because she's a flower, and also Ethel was like, girls, don't go near Lillian, stay away from her. If you go near her, you'll get in trouble. So literally everyone is isolated away from Lillian. She is literally forced to be by herself outside as a flower, and the only person that visits her is Alice. That is so depressing and messed up. All because she just colored a flower rainbow colored. That is so fucked up. And after this, all the teachers were like, Ethel, what was that for? Why did you do that? But because of what Ethel did, they were also afraid of her because she's got these magic powers out of nowhere, and they're like, we don't want to fuck with her because like we don't want to end up like Lillian, but also they were like upset because, you know, Lillian obviously did not deserve such a punishment. And this also starts the epidemic of Ethel starting to give other girls punishments that are really harsh and severe for no reason. So Micah steps in and is like, Ethel, you need to chill out. You can't keep doing this. You gotta tone it down. But Ethel's like, no, I'm not going to. Everyone's pissing me off and I really don't like this going on. So they make a deal, and it's really sad. So Ethel was like, you know what, fine. I will tone it down. I will not harm Alice. But everyone else is open season, pretty much. I will punish them, but I won't punish Alice, because Micah and Alice have like a pretty close relationship. Alice frequently vents and is constantly with like Micah because he's like a father to her, and also because he's like one of the few people at the Abbey that's not like rude to her. So Micah was pretty much like, okay, if you're gonna harm the other girls, can you at least leave Alice alone? And Ethel's like, fine. But that doesn't obviously stop Ethel from being passive aggressive to her. Everything is just really tense at the moment. Ethel and Micah's relationship starts to break because Micah is like, oh my gosh, I'm in a relationship with a woman who's very unhinged and abusive, and I love her, but also I'm afraid of her at the same time. So he doesn't know what to do. Alice doesn't know what to do. No one knows what to do. Everyone is like really scared and like freaked out because Ethel is just going crazy for no freaking reason. And Madeline is meanwhile is like completely fine, by the way. She's like, oh, I'm so happy. Like, you know, Lillian totally deserved that. Yeah, basically Ethel just pushes everyone away and makes everyone just really upset with her. And of course, this causes misery that the Jabberwocky feeds off of. So this just becomes a really depressing, unsettling, and dreary environment for everybody. It just gets worse, and I really don't have an ending idea for like this story, but I do want it to be bittersweet. But yeah, like I do think that eventually Ethel will like turn into the Red Queen, where she has like a final form where she becomes like this distorted and like sort of exaggeration of femininity, but like in a monstrous form. And like the main characters pretty much have to fight her or whatever, and that is pretty much like the lore that I have for her so far. So yeah, that is the lore of Mother Ethel. It was pretty depressing. Yeah, she's not a great person. I know that I joke about her a lot and stuff, and I make these memes, but it's just, sometimes, you know, when you make a character that's really dark, you gotta like lighten up some things. But yeah, she's just so complex because it's like what she's doing is obviously very wrong and fucked up, but also like when you consider her backstory and her insecurities, it's clear that she just wants to be loved and she wants to be accepted. And the thing is, she was loved and accepted, but she just couldn't accept it because she was remembering her past and she can never escape it. She's continuing the cycle of abuse because that's all that she knows. She had the chance to escape it and to fight it and to break the cycle, but she's starting it over again. So really it's up to Alice to break the cycle. And also like her relationship with Micah is also really depressing because it's clear that they love each other, but Micah is afraid of her because he doesn't know what she's gonna do next. He keeps making these things, and what he did wasn't really the best either, but like, what could he possibly have done? Because he wanted to protect all the girls, but Ethel's got these powers that could literally like alter reality basically. So obviously he doesn't want to fuck with that, so he tried his best to reason with her, and that was the best that he could get out of it. So obviously he's not happy about this, and they start to distance themselves. And then with Madeline, she's being smug as always because she's like, oh well, Mother Ethel loves me the most because she thinks I'm the best. And this is just a story of how like being a woman is just really hard, and how like different aspects of girlhood, womanhood, motherhood, and blah blah blah, and how like the toxicity of standards of beauty affects girls specifically. It's a story about girlhood, basically. Like, originally it was supposed to be more of like Mother Ethel trying to maintain like this utopia or something, but really it became more of a story of just how like this motherly figure is enforcing the abuse that she endured onto girls that were just like her, pretty much, and how it takes one of her own daughter figures to basically break that cycle because she's clearly can't do it herself. And reminiscent of how things are nowadays, like that's kind of why I was inspired to make this sort of story, because of how like things are currently in terms of like politics. Like, I didn't want to get in depth with politics, but that's kind of how things are. Like, women are forced to live up to these standards of beauty and femininity. And even women who are really feminine, if they look a certain way, like if your jaw is too square, oh, that's bad. Or if you're too tall like Ethel, or you don't have like curves like Ethel, well, I guess you're not womanly enough. Sucks to suck, I guess, but that just seems how society is working. It's like, the perfect woman doesn't exist, but Ethel wants to be the perfect woman, and it's clear that she's so hurt that she's trying to enforce this on everyone else, but she can never achieve that perfection because it doesn't exist. It's a reminder that, you know, femininity is just what you make of it. Like, there's no true final boss of woman, you know, like women just can be women. You can be a woman, be as masculine as you want to be, you can be as feminine as you want to be, like, who cares? But unfortunately, this is a story about how these toxic beliefs harm people. I don't know how to end this video. I don't want it to be on a depressing note, so I'm just gonna end it on another Tomodachi Life song. I don't know if this will resonate with people. It's definitely pretty intense and mature for a story. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about the dark lore of Mother Ethel, and I'll see you quacks later.
I hate me. They say Ethel is because I'm red. Truth is, I gotta be just the mother is he told me. He's gone. He is red, white, block. I want to be alone. Growing in his darkness.